All right. All right, everyone. Welcome to the 403BWise event, Get Wise to Budgeting. My name is Dan Otter. I am the executive director of 403bwise.org. I am a former elementary and middle school teacher. I've also been a college professor and a college administrator. I've run 403BWise since the year 2000. We became a nonprofit in 2019 thanks to the generous support of Next Gen Personal Finance, a nonprofit that creates fabulous free personal finance curriculum for teachers. I got involved in 403B advocacy because of sales agents coming into my classroom and selling expensive, unsuitable products. And I'm as passionate about this mission today as I was when I founded it in 2000. Over to you, Scott.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Downhauer. I'm a certified financial planner and owner of Meridian Wealth Management. Spent the last 20 years working with teachers. My wife is a teacher, and I'm a fiduciary advisor. But don't worry, I'm not here to sell you anything. Um, just here to promote the 403bwise.org mission and hopefully organize some questions later on in the event.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. So, quick disclaimer, nothing presented or discussed should be construed as investment or tax advice. This can be secured from a vetted fiduciary advisor or tax professional. At a minimum, your advisor should hold a CFP. If you're at all interested in working with what we would call the right kind of advisor, we have a story on this on the homepage of 403B Wise towards the bottom. It's called Working with an Advisor. Just a couple events I want you to be aware of that are coming up next week. Scott and I are going to take a close look at the 403B and the 457B. We're going to look at the similarities and the differences. Then we're really excited. I think the CPA who is going to be hosting this event is on the call, Dan Huron. It's called Teachers in Taxes, and I've posted a question on the 403B Wise Facebook. So if you have questions you would like Dan to address, tax questions, if there are questions you'd like him to address at that event, go ahead and post it there. We will also take some questions during that event. And then our monthly office hours where we just answer questions. And I always say this, it's not really me answering the questions. It's usually Scott. We'll be taking your financial and investing questions for about an hour. That'll be on February 18th. And then Scott and I are really excited about this. Three of the amazing women we have met as part of this running 403B Wise, Tara, Danielle, um, and Jessica, I want to call her the penny pinching pathologist, and an author named Jackie are going to host an event on the topic of women in investing. And we're looking forward to that. Like all our events, you can sign up for them at 403bwise.org/events. So I'm going to introduce David. He's going to talk about budgeting, and then we're going to take some questions. He's got a presentation for you as well. So David Gurley, he is from Kansas City, Missouri. He is a dad to a fantastic 20-month-old daughter. As someone who used to have a fantastic 20-month-old daughter, I can tell you it is awesome being a dad, and it's awesome when they're at that age. Although it's good, David, that you're a lot younger than me because those 20-month-olds, they will take your time. He is a former collegiate swimmer and swim coach, and he's a former math teacher. His wife is a current teacher, and she teaches Spanish. David left the classroom, I believe, last year to start The Budget Teacher, and you can find that at thebudgetteacher.com. David, like an increasing number of people, believes that the 457B is greater than the 403B. He was a guest on Teach and Retire Rich, our podcast, and that was episode 116. I will post that in the Zoom chat. And if you want to reach David, you can contact him at david@thebudgetteacher.com. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, David. Thanks again for joining us.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here as well. There we go. So get wise to budgeting. So in the chat, let's go ahead and, this is an interactive event, obviously, and I've got if you see me looking over the side, I've actually got a second computer pulled up so that way I can see some of these chat answers. Just type in there. It can be just as simple as a yes or no, but have you ever tried or had a budget that you've used in the past? So put just it could just be a yes or no answer in there. All right, seeing some things come in, some yeses, some nos, more yeses than nos. That's good. Okay. And for the people that have, do you think that it was successful? So I guess the people that know this is not for you at this point, but if you have tried one, did you have any success with it? Did you like it? Okay, seeing some that quit after getting bored. No, okay. Follower Dave Ramsey, so some months. All right. Yes, but struggled during COVID. Yep, I understand that. I think that's kind of a general, I think a lot of people struggled during COVID with a lot of things. Okay, so great answers. I'm glad that there's kind of a mix of people here. Personally, I've founded The Budget Teacher, and by the name there, I love budgeting. And there's some reason why, but before we get into that, I just want to share kind of an agenda of what's going to happen. That way you can understand, kind of the process here. I'm not going to take the next 3 hours of your life, but we will be talking for probably about 20 or 30 minutes, but there will be some interactions in there also. We're going to do, a little introduction for myself, some why this is important, some money mindset work, first steps, categories, logistics, next steps, and then a Q&A at the end. All right, so let's start with an introduction. And as Dan mentioned, I have been a part of a two-teacher family for 5 years now. But my wife and I, we just got married 3 years ago, and about 3.5 actually. And what I always try to tell people is that we did not have it all figured out when we got married. We were the, I would say, stereotypical couple where we made a lot of mistakes, a lot of financial mistakes. We, probably purchased a house when we weren't ready for it. I bought a brand new car when I was 27, first year of teaching. I got that paycheck and decided it was a good time for me to buy a brand new car. That's, probably not the most wise decision. We knew that we wanted to start a family. And as you can see, there's my little girl in the picture. But back then, 3.5 years ago, we were looking around to like, we don't know where our money's going. We don't know how much we spend each month. We don't know how much we know how much we make, but we didn't really have a very good picture of our finances. And I wanted to change all of that. And luckily my wife is incredible. And she changed with me and kind of, we changed the trajectory of our family because we started budgeting and started kind of figuring out our money situation. Again, that was 3.5 years ago that we started on this journey. And so I always tell people that if you're in a position right now where you feel like you're not in the most ideal financial scenario, 3.5 years ago, we were in that same boat. And now we feel very secure enough for me because we knew this information, that we made enough off my wife's salary and we spent less than that I felt comfortable quitting a full-time job with benefits and all, it's a little bit crazy, but we knew those numbers. And by knowing them, we could make that decision. So that's just a little bit about me. If you're in that position right now, just know that 3.5 years was all it took. And that can feel like a long time, but you look backwards and it's like, wow, that just flew by, right? So we're going to talk about some of those ways that you can get started on that today if that's something that you're interested in. All right, so starting with kind of the purpose is, I believe, the fundamental thing that you have to do. And so think about your current relationship with money. And again, go back to that chat. What words come to mind whenever you think about your relationship with money? And I'm going to read some of these out if you feel comfortable sharing. And I hope at least one person does. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit here and look at a screen. Comfort. Okay, good. Learning. Great. Thrifty. That is one that describes me as well. Trying to learn more. Very good. Choice. I love that. Love and hate. Tension. Live frugally to avoid stress. Sad. So these are things that I mean, obviously, many of these I've heard before. Many of my clients have come to me and they are also a lot of these words, but some that kind of come to mind over that I've seen over and over are just a lot of emotional ties to money. And one of the things is that a lot of people think that numbers are, very quantitative, but the problem is that um, there's emotion tied to all of our lives. And so money is a very emotional thing. Okay, we're going to keep going with some, in the chat. What is it, if you could change something with your money, what is it that you would want to change? I'll give you a moment. I'll read them off if you're willing to share again. And hopefully at least one person is. I'm going to look at the screen for a minute. More in savings. Okay. Have more money. Earn more. Saving more, sorry. Working towards 5. More risk in investments, yeah. Should have started sooner. Limit big mistakes, earn more, mindful, retirement. No more accurate data to feel confident to make big decisions. Build a time machine and teach my younger self about compound interest. Yes. Tracking and investing. So with budgeting, one of my favorite things about it is that you know where your money's going. And a lot of these things, not necessarily, today we're going to focus not as much on the earning side, which is a very powerful side of the money, right? I mean, if you can earn more, it's always a great thing. But also being aware that just because you make more money, if you don't know how to manage it, it doesn't necessarily do you any good, right? So having that awareness and being able to track money and knowing where your money is going, I think is such a big thing. But it really comes down to figuring out what your reasoning is behind it also, because, as somebody mentioned with the, like there's stress and things that happen in your life and we fall off of those decisions. But if budgeting is something that you're wanting to do, if you are in a position right now that you're not happy with, then you've got to figure out what is it that I want the most, and then not let anything deter you from getting that in the future, right? So I like to start by kind of writing some goals and some thoughts down on paper. But the big one is always, why am I doing this? And I'll tell you that my reason has been before and always will be, and I didn't know it 3.5 years ago that it was going to be a daughter, but it was my family. And mostly for my daughter. And it's like, I want to make sure that we are putting her in a position that she's not, doesn't need food and doesn't need clothing and all the necessities of life, that we won't have to make that decision. And so that was always my why, is my family. All right. So another part of, I think, budgeting, and again, this is kind of the pre-budgeting, is that you have to be in the right mindset before you can get going. And so one of the big things that I have encountered in the last about 8 months, as I've been helping, and I've been doing it for much longer than that, but 8 months ago, roughly, I quit teaching and really ramped up the financial coaching. And one of the things that I see over and over is guilt and shame wrapped around money and the mistakes that were made in the past. And one of my, the starting points is always that we talk about that you have to release yourself from the guilt and from the shame, because you can't move on if you are sitting there with that guilt and shame on your shoulders. So what I like to remind people of is that you're here now, and I don't know where your journey is, obviously, because I'm staring into a camera and you're on the other end somewhere out in the world. But knowing that you're here now because you've made a choice to be here, and that whatever has happened in the past is in the past, and you can now focus on moving forward. So one big thing is that you have to realize that, let it go. And it really, the guilt and shame will hold you back. And it's not something that's a helpful thing. Now it's good maybe to recognize if you've made a mistake in the past and to try to prevent it in the future. That's one of my big things that I focus on in my own life is, I look at my old mistakes and say, okay, I'm not going to repeat those. But you also can't shame yourself, feel that guilt, because you won't be able to move forward. And this is something that also I tell every single client and on all my presentations. Your self-worth is not determined by your net worth. And I think that's such an important thing, because every person is unique. You have a skill set and a set of things that you bring to the world that nobody else does. And even if you're in the negative because you've got debt, or whether your net worth is at zero because you've just climbed out and you're at the baseline right now, or whether you have several $1 million, you offer something to the world. And just know that you have to respect yourself. So the self-worth part of that is huge. And then this is just a quote that I really like as well. You are one decision away from a totally different life. And I just think that's cool. And, if you are in the position right now where you are not happy with your finances and not happy with your financial situation, maybe today making the decision to be here is that one decision that can set you up for the future. So something kind of cool to think about, the possibilities there. So as far as actually getting into budgeting, I think that the number one thing that you have to do is you have to be aware of where your money is going. And we do that by tracking your expenses. The left side is just kind of a general ledger. And by the way, on the left side, that is my own document that, and I'll tell you how you can get that. We've actually got it for free if you'd like it at the end. And then obviously some people just like to put pen to paper and do it themselves. Also, you could do it on the spreadsheet on Excel. The way that you do it does not matter, okay? But you have to track your money, okay? And especially if you haven't budgeted before, you need to have a baseline of where is your money going. So awareness is that big thing. So like I said, the first thing that I have every single client do, and the one that I would tell you to do right now is, if you're wanting to make a change, is start tracking your expenses. So the way that we did it for a number of months was every night when we got home, we would save our receipts, pull the receipts out, and then write it on a piece of paper. And it was that easy. Like, I'm not talking about any Excel formulas yet. I'm not talking about any budgeting software. All that you have to do is just write it down. Okay. And then at the end of the month, then you're going to have a list of things that you've spent money on. And it might be a really long list, and it might be a really short list. That's going to be dependent on you and your family. But I do believe that you have to track your expenses. So let's look at the next step then. The next step is going to be analyzing. Okay. So after you have spent your money, the question is, are you spending more than you're making? And if you are, then you're in a situation where we're going to have to either A, figure out how to make more income, or B, figure out how to cut expenses. That's the only two sides to this equation that are even out there. Those are the two possibilities. You either make more or you spend less. That's it. So looking at your spending, it can be challenging, by the way. And so I want to make that very clear that sometimes I have seen people that will track their money like I asked them to, which is great. That's always a good first step. And then get to the analyze part and give up because they're seeing that they're negative. And that's not the right answer, because the thing is that if you sweep it under the rug, it's not going to just go away. But you also do need to be aware. Okay, so after you analyze, if you have if you're coming out in the green, if you're doing well and you're under budget, then it gives you some options. If you are in the red, if you're spending more than you're making each month, then you're going to have to make changes right away, because the problem is that as you spend each month, you're going to go more and more into debt if you continue that lifestyle that you're living, which means that you have overextended yourself. And sometimes the reason why we've overextended ourselves is because we've gotten into debt, and the debt obligations are adding up to a point where it starts to take away from your income so much that you're having troubles paying off the debt and living your life. But the problem with that, then you just continue to go into more and more debt. So I guess the other side of that is you could try, and there's a number of ways to do it, of increasing your income. But again, if you can't control the spending on a fixed lower income, you're not probably going to be able to do it at a higher income. One of the things I always hear, and some of my close friends have been guilty of this as well, is, well, I'll deal with that whenever I make a little bit more money. And then they make a little bit more money, and then guess what? They spend a little bit more as well because they have that additional money in their bank account, right? And it's just so easy. After you have tracked and done some analyzing, I like to create categories. And I'm actually going to go to the next slide here in order to show what some of those categories are. So once I have a kind of an idea of what, and obviously every family is going to have different categories. These are some that I use. And yeah, Scott's saying that's called lifestyle inflation. Yes. These are some of the categories that my family uses. Obviously not all of them, but these are some of them that we see that are generally that everybody has. And so what we want to do is start coming up with figures for each one. So after a couple of months of tracking and after a couple of months of analyzing, then it's time to start going into the category breakdown. So I might look at my groceries, and I know that this is a hot topic issue, by the way, because obviously you folks out in California are probably going to see a very, very different grocery bill than I'm seeing in Missouri, right? But I think you guys might also see a paycheck that somewhat correlates with that. But I'm going to use some grocery figures that we've used in the past. So if we have $500 a month for our groceries, we're going to put that as our category. And then when we had, the baby who's now eating food, okay, guess what? The best part about a budget, it's flexible. Bump it up to $600 a month. Okay, we can do that. Utilities, needs for the house, subscriptions, obviously. So the goal is to come up with a realistic number that you can use for each of your categories. Now, after you get done coming up with this realistic figure for all of your categories, you do want to make sure that that number is less than what you're bringing in each month. So your income minus your expenses needs to have at least a value in there. There needs to be at least a penny left over. Some people, I've heard zero-based budgeting. I love that idea of making sure that every dollar has somewhere to go, whether that includes savings or debt payoff or whatever it is, but having a plan, I think, is so powerful. And the other thing about budgeting is it puts the ball in your court. You get to decide what you want to spend on these various categories rather than looking at it after you've done it and trying to figure out where it all went. So for example, and like I said, Missouri numbers, I know that they're going to be totally different, but if I have $600 for groceries, $200 for utilities, $200 for our needs for the house, maybe $50 for subscriptions, going out to eat, let's say $100 or 200 or whatever. And that's, who knows what you're spending. And then personal spend, I think is important as well. Once you have those numbers, turn it into a game, try to stay under them. And the thing is again, the flexibility of the budget. If it doesn't work for you, bump it up, but just make sure that that you're meeting your goal of staying under the amount of income that you bring in a month. So sometimes there are months when we want to go out to eat more, and maybe we're going to cut a little bit out of our personal spend and go out to eat. Now, luckily, COVID has taken that completely away, so we have not really had to worry about going out to eat. Our fund for that is quite large right now. But maybe, needs for the house, maybe you've got some event that has taken place, or, who knows what. Everybody's life's going to be different, but making sure that it can fit within your budget. I'm telling you that if you have not tried it, it is so powerful because you're in control, which I think makes a huge, huge difference. Okay, let's talk about the reason why I see a lot of budgets that fail. And this is sinking funds. And actually, we went kind of in depth on this in our podcast episode. And so, if you want to hear more about that, episode 116 of the budget of the Teach and Retire Rich podcast. I almost promoted myself there. So let's do a pretend here that you make $3,000 a month and you're spending $2,800 per month. Okay, so the question is, are you under budget? And I want to see some people's thoughts here in the chat. Go ahead and put it in there. Are you under budget if you bring in $3,000 a month and you're spending $2,800 per month? If anybody wants to try, it's not fully a trick question, but kind of a trick question, I guess. Depends on saving retirement goals, miss some expenses and taxes. Says yes, but it seems like a trick question. It kind of is. Depends. Do you have an emergency fund? Too close for emergencies, for sure. As long as you aren't financing part of your lifestyle, definitely. Depends on if you budgeted for unexpected expenses. Yes. You need to tell every dollar where to go. I do believe that as well. It depends on your budget. Sure. So great answers. But here's the thing is that, like, let's pretend for a moment that is January that you just got finished with, and you made 3,000 and you spent 2,800. And let's say you do that again in February. And let's say that you do that. That's what you bring home. So this is bring home right there. So after taxes, after pension, any other health insurance, whatever comes out of your paycheck, this is the money that you come home with every month. So you come home with 3,000 and you spend 2,800. But here's the problem that I have seen many times is, let's say, for example, in my household, we pay our car insurance every 6 months. We buy Christmas gifts. Guess what? And I'm not saying this to be like a jerk, but if you didn't know, every December 25th is Christmas, and there are little kids running around that definitely expect presents from you. So, especially in my household, at least. So that's going to come up. That's an expense, and I know it's going to come up. And so if I can prepare for that ahead of time, I'm going to. And routine vet bills. My dog just had her teeth cleaned yesterday. It was almost $400. But I know that's coming up. So guess what? Every single month, when I have those categories that I just showed you on this last screen, let's go back over here. I also put in categories for things that don't happen all the time. And those are my sinking funds. So I've got a category for Christmas gifts. And, actually mine's just called gifts. But we put $100 a month in there. In January, we didn't have to touch it. February, we won't have to touch it. March, we have a whole bunch of birthdays in March. And so some of that money is going to come out. And then April, no birthdays. May, we have some more coming up. So basically it builds though, and it has time to actually build up. Car insurance, we pay it every 6 months. Well, guess what? If you don't have that saved for, that car insurance bill that comes every 6 months that is going to come could be a big hit to your finances. And we don't want to go into debt over something that we know is coming in the future. For the people that don't have property taxes, oh, how I envy you. Because here, we get hit at the worst time of the year, by the way. It comes right at November, December, right whenever you're planning for Christmas. And pre-budgeting, I used to get so mad about that. But now I have a line item in my budget. And as soon as it comes, I immediately pay it off because I don't like to really look at it that much. Same thing with the vet bills. I know that they're going to happen. We've got, an exam that happens every year. We've got a tooth cleaning that happens every year. And we have flea and, tick and heart guard and all that stuff that we have to pay for. So I know that's coming. Why not save for it a little bit at a time rather than having a massive hit all at once? So if you haven't tried sinking funds, at least give it a try. Think about everything that you spend money on throughout the year. Break it down, like take the total for the year, divide it by 12. It'll make, at least I can speak from my own experience. It makes the world of difference. Same thing with like vacations. That's another big one that's not on here. But having that money in there and being able to access it is, So let's talk about some of the logistics behind it, because sometimes I hear people say, okay, that's great to have that sinking fund, but if it's all sitting in the same bank account, what do I do? Like I'm gonna spend the money that's in the bank account. So some budgeting tools that I like personally, I just like spreadsheets, and it's maybe that's well, actually, I'm not maybe. It's the nerd side of me, but I enjoy creating spreadsheets. I enjoy looking at them. So, but a lot of people are not in that same boat, and I understand that. So there are other options. You Need a Budget, I think, is great. EveryDollar, the free one, I think is really, really great. And one of the things about EveryDollar that I like is you can have it on your phone. You can get you, and if you got a spouse, you guys can both be on the same account. And they kind of have the sinking funds built in a little bit. It's a lot of the way that I use my own personal budget, and so I really like that one. Mint, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I've heard other people use it, so I can't speak to it necessarily. But basically, find something that works for you, and if you need to, shoot me an email, and I'll show you how to do that here later on, and I can try to help you figure something out, because I do think that having a budgeting system is just so powerful. So let's talk about the online sinking fund tools, because I do really like these. The one that I use is Capital One 360, so I can speak more to it. And then I've had clients that have used Ally Bank and really like it. On these, so there's a general account, right? And inside of that account, you can create categories. And within those categories, you can actually schedule payments from yourself to yourself every single month. And I think that it's such a great way to get that money out of your checking account where you might be tempted to spend it, move it over into a pre-designed, category. So let's take vacations, for example. I don't know, everybody's comfort level is probably different. We have not gone on a vacation in a long time right now. So our fund just continues to build and build. And every month, a little bit of money gets pulled out of our checking account and gets sent to our Capital One 360 account. And that way, now again, I love budgeting anyways, so I don't know that necessarily be a problem. But if you are one that looks at your checking account and just likes to spend whatever's in there, it gets it out of the checking account, gets it out of your mind, and gets it over to somewhere else. So that way you're not tempted by it. This can be a great thing for all of those sinking funds, but also things like clothing could be one that I've seen people use for. The vacations is obviously a good one. Sometimes people use it for like a new car fund where they take maybe even $50 a month or maybe $100 a month and move it out of their checking and over to one of these categories that they've built. So that way, when the time comes, they have that money sitting there, and a little bit of money spread out over a long period of time adds up to a lot of money. So, I've seen people that have paid off entire cars by putting $100 a month into an account and, driving their current car. And then when it comes time, or they need maybe a car repair or something like that, but they have that money sitting there. Again, I guess one of the big things that I want to tell you is that very few things should be a surprise to you when they happen. Again, I don't want to sound like a jerk about it at all, but nobody should be ever surprised that a car repair needs to happen. I'm going to tell you, if you're driving a car, it's going to need a repair. It might be tomorrow. It might be a year from now. It might be 5 years from now. But at some point in time, it's going to cost you, and it's probably going to cost you big, because cars are they cost a lot to maintain. So what if, instead of, hoping that it doesn't happen, what if you took $100 every month and put it into one of these categories, built out a sinking fund for it, and had that money sitting there? I'll tell you what I think the answer would probably be is that you're going to find that the stress of your life financially starts to fade away. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to be stressed, because there's a lot of other things, but at least in the financial side, I believe that having a budget can really, really, really help you. Okay, so I know there's probably gonna be questions on that. I'll definitely get to those later. So there's some things that I want to make sure that you have today, because I am one that I hate whenever you go to like a webinar or something like that, like what we're doing today, and you don't have actionable takeaways right off the bat, right? Nobody wants that. So here's some 3 actionable takeaways that I want you to know that you could do, and you can find all of these inside of this free guide. And let's see if I can throw this in the chat. No, not from here. Maybe one of the Scott or Dan could type that into the chat, so that way you could go to it if you want. But there's 7 money tips in there. There's another one as well, a bonus. But there's 3 things that I want you to know. And the first one is, so an actionable takeaway, meal plan. Okay. It's as easy as that. And I don't know if everybody in here is necessarily works in education. I know that obviously Tara's the SLP. And then I know that there's probably a number of teachers as well. When I was in teaching, and I know that my wife still, when we got home from a day's work, we're exhausted. And the last thing that we want to do, and what we used to do, it actually blows my mind, is we used to sit around and be like, what do you want for dinner? Oh, I don't know. What do you want for dinner? I can't even believe that we did that. Now we get to do it all on Sunday night, and it's terrible. I will tell you, I absolutely dread it each week. But the rest of the week, actually we do it on Saturday night, sorry, because I go hit the grocery stores on Sunday morning. But so for about 30 minutes, we try to figure out what all we're going to eat all week long. And it is not fun. We don't enjoy that part at all. But when we get home from work each day, guess what? We don't have to worry about what we're having. We have it on a magnetic board, and it's actually in the Acer Finances. I've even included which one we use because I love it. And it's dry erase markers, and we have it up on the board. And then that way I can look at it and say, okay, you know, we're having, let's say, burgers tomorrow night. I better take out burgers tonight, so that way they're thawed out of the freezer. It will take so much of your stress away. But on top of that, by having that plan, it saves us a ton of money because we know exactly what we need. We take a list to the store. Now, obviously, I'll still make some extra purchases, but it does cut those down quite a bit. And the biggest part is that we don't waste food like we used to because we have a plan for our food. Now, that does not mean that we meal prep. Okay, meal prep is something different. Meal planning is something different. Meal prepping to me means somebody would make it all on Sunday. We do not do that. Okay, we still make our meals each night, but we know what we're going to have. So that's my first takeaway, is meal plan. The second one is make a plan. This is not with meal plan anymore, but just make a plan. So if your goal is to get out of debt, start making a plan. How are you going to do that? And there's some tips and tricks and things that we use inside of this Acer Finances. But the big thing is just track your expenses. Start today. There's no reason not to. If you're somebody who wants to do this, I think there's probably some people on here who are just listening and don't necessarily need the advice. If you are trying to get your finances under control, start tracking your expenses today. And the last one is, and somebody alluded to this earlier, you need to have an emergency fund. Okay. And the categories that we use are very, very nice. But even on top of that, I would say start trying to build up an emergency fund, maybe even before you start trying to get some of those categories going. Just because having that little bit of buffer, even if it's, let's say $500, $1,000, $2,000, if you have that little bit of buffer, it makes it so that way you don't have to, possibly go into more credit card debt. If something happens, you don't have to use your, if you have an emergency that comes up that you don't have planned for, you got a little something for it. And let's see. So all of that is inside. I guess one more thing that is not inside there, and this is just something I want to kind of mention real briefly. Budgeting is extremely challenging for the first couple of months. And part of the reason why on that is because, especially, which you should be doing the categories, the sinking funds. And if something happens, let's take the car repair example. If something happens in month 2, well, you're not going to have very much saved up at that point, right? And so it makes it really challenging. The first couple of months, it's like anything. Think about it like starting a new workout, for example. It's a challenge. You got to get through that initial hump, and then there is a point, and I don't know exactly. Everybody's a little bit different, but there is a point where you're going to break through and be like, "This is the best thing that you've ever done." Okay, and if you don't believe me on that, try it first and then tell me that I lied to you in like 8 months. So I'll let you at least try it first. All right, so let's talk about some next steps. So I am on Instagram at the Budget Teacher, _budget_teacher, and we put daily finance tips and inspiration. Me and my wife, we both kind of run it together, and she helps with some of the creative side, and I help her with some of the ideas and some of the different things that we have. We do have a money mindset reset course, and you can find it at courses.thebudgetteacher.com. This is one of the things that I would suggest that everybody go through if you're going to, well, I have most of my clients go through it before they come and meet with me, because it gives them a chance to get into the right headspace and start thinking about more or less the behavior side of budgeting before you get to the number side, which I think is so important. And my wife recorded all the videos and put it together. And by the way, it's silly cheap. It's $6.97 and 8 modules. There's a bunch of printables in there. And she took that and ran with it because she said that it's something that she wishes she would have had. And we didn't find anything like it anywhere. And so she created that. And I think she's done an incredible job. And finally, Dan and Scott have been gracious enough hosts to invite me back again on March 2nd. I have seen from enough people and heard from enough people that I've been talking to over the last 8 months that student loans seem to be a constant struggle and a pain point where people need immediate attention. And so I went out and got certified as a student loan professional. And the knowledge that I got is incredible. And I now understand how to help people solve student loan problems, mostly for teachers, SLPs, anybody that's working in schools. Public service loan forgiveness and teacher loan forgiveness are 2 incredible programs. And but as far as like PSLF, there are very, very strict rules that the government says you have to follow in order to qualify. And it's like playing a game where they don't give you the rules ahead of time and then expect you to know them at the end. And so a lot of people are trying to qualify for PSLF and they think they've done their 10 years, but it turns out that they actually haven't at all. And probably causing a massive amount of frustration, I could imagine. So I am trying to change that as far as educators and people that work in education, because I do know the rules and I can help you figure them out as well. So that way we can go and win this game. Email is david@thebudgetteacher.com. You can send me an email literally anytime. It might take me, a couple hours to get back to you, but I love when people send me questions and or just tell me what you thought about the webinar today. So if you want to get a hold of me though, that is my email right there. And the very last thing that I want to show you is this quote before we get to the Q&A part. I think that it's a powerful quote, but I also I love it. It is not necessary to do extraordinary things to get extraordinary results. And so what I will at least interpret that Warren Buffett means by this is that consistency wins over a long period of time. And so if you decide that you want to budget and you do it all out for 1 month, that's not going to go great. But if you decide that you want to budget and you, do it about 80%, you're fairly good at tracking your numbers. You do enough that you have a rough idea and you do that for several years, you're going to be in a phenomenal position. So I think that doing things, you don't have to go all out right off the bat. You got to think of it as the marathon and not the sprint. So, and I think it's like that with, investing and with a lot of things that money involves is if you decide to make a real quick change, it's not going to be great results. But if you kind of do it a little bit at a time over a long period of time, you're going to see a lot better results overall. So, all right. Next page I've got is the thank you page. So thank you guys for having me on here. I'm going to stop my share.
All right, David, that was fantastic. I knew it would be good. And I love when we get to hear from teachers, your teaching style, your presentation style. It's clear that you were an excellent, and I will say you're always a teacher, even though you've left the classroom, I consider you still a teacher. So what I thought we'd do now is if you could post questions Scott is looking at them, and then he will address those to David. Scott, did we get that one link, the bit.ly link, working? Because I don't know if David, now, if you want to grab that link since you're not presenting again, and because we had someone say it wasn't working. If you want to do
I
that,
guess
and then
there is
Scott,
always
you're
a
on,
possibility it's a broken link too.
and Scott, you're on mute. If you want to,
There it is. It was we didn't put the HTTP / on it, so it didn't work. But I put it on, and this is the link right here. Where will it actually
Sorry
take
about that. I guess I should have.
It's okay.
Hey, before we
Dave,
get going into the questions, also, I don't know if it's okay with you guys, but can we turn anybody that wants to? Can we turn back on our videos? Just I'd like to see people rather than talking into the abyss.
yeah, it's again, I respect anyone. It's one of these challenges I have. I teach a class, and some students, they just don't want their camera on, and I don't make them. But
Yeah.
oh, well, thanks, everyone. All right, this is great.
Yeah, nobody has to, but if I'd rather see a face rather than
And I want to say we're going to make registration information to David's March 2nd student loan event. That'll probably be on the webpage by next week. Okay. So just again, 403bwise.org/events.
All right, people are starting to post some questions. While they're, I'll give you guys another minute or two to post some questions while you're doing that. David, I love the sinking fund idea. I have extensive spreadsheets for my own budget. I mean, I have it down to like tires, and for my house, I've got it air conditioning because I know it's going to go out the worst possible time, and it's so super expensive.
Yeah.
Heater, pool, all sorts of stuff. But I think the funniest one I ever did was for vacations. Like when me and my wife first got married, she was a teacher. I was starting a small business, starting this business, and man, we didn't make very much money at all for many years. And spreadsheet throwdown. And so when we would go on vacations, I would literally have, we would save up for the vacation, and then I would have a budget for each day. I mean, a little budget for each day. So, we couldn't spend this. I knew how much we were going to spend for breakfast, how much for lunch, how much for dinner. And, we could vary it a little bit. And I am going to date myself on this one. I would buy traveler's checks. Does anybody on here know what traveler's checks are? Raise your hand. Okay, so we got some of you. I would buy traveler's checks in the amount of that we were going to spend, so that we wouldn't. So I didn't bring. I only brought enough cash, if anything went wrong. When those traveler's checks were up, man, our spending was up. We went to Hawaii on our honeymoon, and by the time we got to with a couple days left, we were running out of money, and we wanted to go on a luau. We did not have enough money for a luau. And that was our first timeshare presentation. That's how we ended up going on the luau, was saying no to a timeshare presentation. But I did not go over my vacation budget. So anyways.
Hey, nice job. Those timeshare presentations are good for free things, at least, as long as you say no.
As long as you say no. All right, so we do have a few questions here. First one from Julie. Do you think it matters how you budget? Weekly, biweekly, monthly? I usually budget per paycheck, but that isn't really a monthly snapshot.
So the biggest thing that I'll say, as far as what I've dealt with client-wise and talking to other people, is you have to figure out what works best for you. Now, in my own life, I believe that monthly, we do monthly, I'll tell you that. But we also get paid once a month. So I don't know if that's more of a per paycheck. The reason why I like monthly is because there are some expenses that come up that only come up once a month. For example, we pay for our daughter's health insurance we don't do that through the employer. And so, and the other thing is that as far as like groceries and whatnot, I like to be able to see it in a whole month view rather than every 2 weeks. Personal preference only. I think that if you have a system that works for you, more power to you. But you got to find something that works for you. If you're trying every 2 weeks and it doesn't work, try the monthly and just give it a go and test. That's the biggest thing that like I said, we've been doing this for 3.5 years now. And the first couple months, we were bad. We were really bad at budgeting. And part of it is trying to get used to just knowing where you're spending money. And then part of it is trying to, just figure the budget out. You also have to be flexible, and you can't get mad at yourself if you go over budget. So it's about, I don't know if that answered the question or not. Most of the answers that I'm probably going to give here are going to be, it's personal, because I think a budget is very personal, but I will continue to try to answer all of them as best I can.
No, I think it's good. I try to do it on a monthly basis, but then, like you said, I try to identify every single expense that is not monthly. I think that's really the biggest key. I mean, that's a huge key in budgeting, is trying to identify every single expense that you're going to have during the year. And if it means like going back through your credit card statements, going back through your checking account for the last 12 months and seeing what those are, put it on a spreadsheet, divide it by 12, and create a. I still do. I have that number, and every month that number gets transferred. The day that my income hits, it gets transferred to my online savings account.
Same thing for me.
And I find it's very, especially with my first house where they did not do impounds for property taxes, and the property taxes were like $600 a month. If I didn't do that, I was not going to have the money at the every 6 months to pay for that. Okay, Tara has this great question. I'm interested in your answer as well, because this drives me insane. So do you make Amazon its own category, or do you separate out everything you buy on there? This is the problem I have with Amazon as well, is it just shows up as Amazon, and we have all different sorts of different categories within Amazon: gifts, household items, education items, clothing, entertainment. Like, we've got all different categories, but it just comes across as Amazon. Very frustrating, because then I don't want to go in every single week and add it all up. But hey, do you have any suggestions for that?
So the way that we do it, which is what I can probably speak best to, is we have a spot in our house where we collect all of the receipts usually I put them in every 2 weeks. Sometimes it turns into 3 or sometimes a month, but we always, we get back to baseline, get back to even at the end of every month. We go through our credit card statement, and I just like to make sure that everything is in the budget. We've got all of our stack of receipts. Honestly, I know that sounds probably crazy to a lot of people. It takes us maybe 15 minutes, because we've gotten down to it to have it on a pretty easy to track basis. As far as Amazon, what we do is, next to that pile of receipts, we keep a notepad. And so when we make an Amazon purchase, we just write it down, just so that way we have it at the end of the month. Because Amazon is, as Scott mentioned, incredibly frustrating, because on on your credit card, it says Amazon. The other thing that is just makes me so mad is that the price changes from the time that you buy it to the time that you actually get charged. Now, it might only be a couple pennies, but I like to know exactly where I'm at, and that frustrates me. But that's the way that I do it. Is if I'm buying a gift, it goes in the gift category. If we're buying something that's, we call it needs for the house. Maybe it's toothpaste or deodorant or toilet paper or paper towels, whatever, diapers. Those go into the needs for the house. And if we spend, and it depends really how crazy we feel like getting. But sometimes if I go to the grocery store and I pick up, paper towels, sometimes I'll split it out. Sometimes I won't. It really depends on what I have left in each fund, and how crazy I want to get. And that's the best part about budgeting is I know people that budget very, very well and don't track every single penny. I like to track every single penny. I'm a weirdo. but there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing.
Okay. Great. No, I don't think you're a weirdo at all, David.
Some people out there might think that. Hey, one other thing that I want to mention is, and I was just thinking about this, for the people that don't want to track every single penny, one thing that I have had very good success with some of my own clients, and then some other people have told me that they've had success as well, is creating a bill out of your kind of spending money. So rather than tracking, going out to eat and maybe, come up with, like, for example, like haircuts or personal spending money or all that stuff, instead of tracking all of that individually, one of the things that I've had people do is take, let's say, $500 per pay period, and just transfer that over to a different checking account. And that is their personal spend on anything that they don't want to, have to track and figure out all the nickel and dimes for every single month. So if you turn your fixed or your variable spending into a fixed amount each month, I've had a lot of people that have had a lot of really good success with that. Does that make sense, I guess? So you turn it into a bill, move it out just like you would your savings, and then you can spend it, well, until it goes to zero, I guess. And you're trying not to go over zero. I guess that's kind of a key, but it's there for you as you need it. And that way you don't have to track every single penny. I've had people that like to do that.
Okay. Are there strategies to more accurately predict complex medical bills? You get deductibles. Sometimes there's, just different fees that are charged. I mean, how do you, I guess it kind of depends on whether you're on a regular insurance plan or a high deductible health plan or something like that. But any general tips there?
So probably not any that I really feel comfortable talking about. I will say that that I choose to put a decent amount into an HSA. And so if a medical bill comes up, I'm hoping that we can cover it from the HSA. As far as trying to prepare for it, I think that if you believe that medical bills are in your future, you could turn that into a sinking fund and put it into a savings account, just like a vacation or clothing or any other thing. So I believe, my personal belief is that anything that could happen, you should have a plan for, and that there should really be no surprises. Now, with that being said, I've heard of people that have medical bills that are insane, and I can't, I guess, predict if that's going to happen to me or to you or to anybody else. I'm hoping that it wouldn't, but I be prepared for anything is the way that I like to view it.
Yeah, I know there are, I think Congress dealt a little bit with surprise medical billing in the last tax bill, although it doesn't apply evidently to ambulances. And that's been a big issue you could have full health insurance, end up in an emergency room and end up not giving consent to an out-of-network doctor and end up with thousands and thousands and thousands of medical expenses. So that can be tough, because that is an expense that you accounted for, and it's still it still ended up being something that you had to pay.
There's always a chance that you won't figure everything out, but the more that you can reduce, the more questions in your life, it comes down to, for me, peace of mind. And the more things that I can control, the less things that I have to worry about popping up randomly.
We've got a sort of a tax question. What are your thoughts on claiming more exemptions to have more money throughout the year versus getting back a lump sum from your tax return?
Yeah, I like that question. My personal belief is that I like to owe $0. And so I do a decent amount of planning. I want to have the money with me, ahead of time, rather than getting a lump sum later. That's a personal preference again. I do know some people that rely on that every year. I don't know that that's necessarily a good strategy, but so for me, I like to have it in my possession. I don't want to give the government a loan on my money, but I also don't want to owe anything either. So my goal each year is to try to get it as close to zero. Obviously, I can't. Well, I'm not usually perfect on that. So, but that's my own personal preference.
So it's this question wasn't answered, but it was kind of implied or asked. It was kind of implied that when do you? I mean, I'm already estimating my income and my taxes for 2021 now. I was doing that in January. I realize most people don't do that, but I mean, when do you start looking at what your do you try to anticipate what your income is going to be for the year? Look at the paycheck to see if they're withholding enough. How do you approach that?
That was a heck of a lot easier to answer whenever I was teaching.
You had
Um,
steady income at that point.
yeah. So right now I'm not really trying that hard, I guess, because right now I'm basically building. And as you mentioned, when you started many years ago, when you're starting a new business, it is surprisingly challenging if nobody's ever told you that before. So I've learned that in the last year or so. But when I was a teacher with a wife who was a teacher and we had very, very consistent income, yeah, I would start usually the year before and determine exactly how much I wanted to put. Well, and I'm a believer, max out Roth IRA. I would figure out how much we're going to put into each 457. We used our HSA and tried to max that out. And the goal is, well, one year, the last year that we were both full-time teachers, I guess last year, we paid, 3.1% in federal income tax. And my goal is to get that down low. I want more of my money to stay with me. And so, yeah, we would try to push as much as we could into those retirement accounts. And then obviously we used, we had a daughter in 2019 as well. So we had some child tax credits and some things that helped us along the way. But I do believe that forward planning, no matter what, whether you're budgeting or whether you're doing taxes or whether you're, teaching a lesson, I think forward planning is better than reverse, like looking back and trying to figure out what just happened. Right. So, trying to think of all the possibilities ahead of time, not maybe, and like I said, you obviously can't figure out everything, but if you have a general idea of things that can come up and a kind of where your attention is going to go, I think that it helps out quite a bit.
All right, great. We've got a couple not tax questions. My gosh, credit card questions. So I'm going to combine these two questions into one. Do some credit cards work better for budget tracking? And what are your thoughts on using cash versus credit cards?
I am a believer that I love credit cards. I absolutely love them. So do some credit cards work better than others? I don't know. So I don't like to do anything, and I don't have my clients do anything that brings the money over for you. I want you to hand enter every single thing into your budget, whether that's every dollar you need a budget or a spreadsheet. I believe that by entering it yourself, especially for the first, let's say 6 months. Now, after you get comfortable with it, okay, maybe we could chat. But I think that early in, having very, very good idea of, okay, I just spent $200 on a meal out. What did that do to my budget? Oh my gosh, it wrecked it. And but seeing that and recognizing that, I think is very powerful. And again, though, not judging yourself on it. It happened. It's what you did. So the answer is, I don't necessarily care which credit card is the best one to transfer over. I want hand entering, whether it's writing it on a piece of paper, putting it into a spreadsheet, whatever that may be. And again, I would say at least for the first couple of months. After that, if there's an easier way, maybe we could, talk about that and figure it out for you. And like, for example, my wife and I now, 3.5 years later, we're on a lot of autopilot. We know what would happen if we go out and spend a bunch of money on a certain thing. I have a pretty good idea of what's in my budget right now and what I have, to work with. On the other side of that, with the credit cards, I haven't paid for an article of clothing in over 10 years. I don't ever pay money for flights, hotels. I love credit card rewards. They are powerful if you are not giving the money back to the credit cards in the form of high interest payments. So I just saw this today, actually. not a not an advertisement for Chase credit cards at all, but I do have a Chase credit card, and they just sent me an updated terms today that the new the new APR for the year is 29.99%. 29.99%. So if you are not paying your credit card off each year, your rewards are not worth it. Okay. Because they're going to give you, like I opened that card, by the way, for, I think, a 60,000 points bonus for my Chase Ultimate Rewards points. That will not be worth anything if you're paying 30% interest on your monthly fees, or on your credit card, I guess. So credit cards, if you use them properly, I think that they're an incredible tool. If you don't have a solid plan right now, I think that you should stop using them, focus on your budget. Once you get the budget under control, yes, I think that they're great. That they offer so many benefits to, and it obviously depends on where you open your credit card at, but I think I like them, given the certain circumstances.
We're going to do a podcast on travel hacking last year, and then COVID hit. So we'll probably do that later on this year. But I endorse that idea as long as you're responsible. We went to Europe summer of 2019 for 3 weeks. We went first class all the way, amazing hotels, amazing Airbnbs, and the only money we spent was on food. Everything else was paid for with points. It was amazing.
Southwest has some amazing deals right now, by the way. And if you can, which there's easy-ish ways to do it, but Southwest, you can open credit cards, basically stack them and get a companion pass. And then not only do you have a boatload of rewards, but your significant other, or whoever I guess if you're married and you don't choose them as your companion, you're probably gonna be in trouble. But you can have a person travel with you for free. And if you do that every other year, where, okay, so 1 year I do it, the next year my wife does it, then basically you can travel for more or less free all the time, and then close the card out and kind of continue the cycle. So there's some pretty cool things you can do with credit cards.
Absolutely. All right. We're getting late here, but we got a couple more questions. I think we can get to them. The only paper receipts we would have would be groceries and gas. Every other receipt would be online. Any suggestions for tracking if it's mostly online?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, the only paper receipts we would have would be groceries and gasoline. Every other receipt would be online. Do you have any suggestions for tracking your expenses if it's mostly online?
Yeah, so just basically the exact same as I mentioned for Amazon. We keep a pad of paper right next to our receipts. Anything that we buy, that has a physical receipt, I just put in the pile. If it doesn't, I just write it down. And so it or keep it on an end table if you do most of your shopping like on the couch or something. I like to just keep a piece of paper nearby. Obviously, it would help if you keep it on the same piece of paper if you're trying for tracking purposes. Or just if you've got a budget, put it right in there. If you're doing it on a spreadsheet or an online budget of some sort, go ahead and put it right in. There's no reason to wait and try it on a different date.
Okay. And are there any common or classic mistakes that teachers make? Do you have any guidance that's specifically geared towards teachers?
I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but one of the biggest things that I see is teachers that only get paid for like 9 or 10 months of the year. Budgeting is your best friend if you only get paid for 10 months of the year, because now I know there are in a lot of the districts that I've talked to and people that work in those districts, credit unions that will help them more or less budget for them by giving them, taking their 12-month salary or their 10-month salary and turning it into 12 months. But you could do that on your own as well, and basically just figure out what do you get paid, divide it by 12. That's the amount that you get to budget with, and then the rest of that needs to go into like a surplus fund or something, a sinking fund for the summer months or something along those lines. as far as other things that teachers, I don't know. I don't know that there's anything specifically, unless somebody has, obviously put it in the comments. If you've got something that you think applies only to teachers or educators, people in education, I want to include Tara in on this because I know that it's not just teachers here. So
Maybe
I don't know that there's anything that's,
classroom spending. Teachers spend a lot of money on their classrooms.
don't do it. Demand that your administration pays for it. No, I wish we could do that. Actually, we could. One of the things that I have actually been talking about this week is, and it's completely unrelated here, and so I'm going to get off topic for just a second. But with all of the craziness of GameStop and AMC and all these stocks, right? I'm not going to talk about those, but what I am going to talk about is the power of people coming together. And if all the teachers came together and just said, we're not paying for classroom materials anymore, it might be kind of crazy. But what kind of an employer makes you pay for the things in your own classroom that you have to use for, it's a sensitive topic.
I hear you. All right, I think this might be the last question we have. Will the mindset course address strategies for 457, pension, health savings accounts? Are there books or authors you would recommend?
The mindset course absolutely does not cover any of that. First of all, it's just about mindset. Second of all, in my opinion, your budget can tell you what you want to do with your money. It's very, very, everything is personalized, not in the course, but a budget should be personalized. And so the amount of money that you can put into a 457. Now, what I will say is that the budget will show you what you have. It'll show you what you have left over. If you teach in a Title I district, money is extremely tight. I know that's why the government needs to be helping us out there too. But yeah, so I think that a budget is designed to allow you to see where your money is going. If you decide that you want to put more into 457, 403B, yes, I think that's a solid move. The money mindset reset course is really not even, it's a little bit of budgeting, but it's more, I would call it the pre-budgeting. It's trying to get you in the right headspace. So that way, and like I said, I have all my clients do that first and then come to me because one, I can find out who's actually serious about taking action. And two, I think that having some of those tools in place first can help you so that way you won't have a budget or won't go on a path that leads you to being unsuccessful. I think that having some of those strategies in place can help you out a lot. What was the second part of that question? Any books or resources?
Yeah.
On budgeting specifically, well, the number one resource is the Teach and Retire Rich podcast. And I believe that there's a blog as well that the 403bwise.org puts on. Now, I do think that they have some incredible stuff, and not to toot my own horn, but I've got on the budgetteacher.com, I write about a lot of things on my blog. I've got a podcast called the Budget Teacher Podcast where we talk mostly about budgeting. And that was brought on because of how much I enjoyed being on Dan and Scott's podcast. And I was like, this is fun. And I want to talk about money more often. And they wouldn't have me on every single week. So I had to start my own show. Otherwise, I mean, I've been following a lot of different blogs, but one of them from a long time ago, and he's kind of changed his tune though. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but it was Millennial Money Man. And I've really enjoyed his stuff for a long time. But he started off really like budgeting, and now it's more like kind of like courses and how to make more money. It's not bad, but it's different. But I really enjoyed him whenever I was first starting out. I love Choose FI or Choose Fi, whichever way you decide to say it. But I don't know that they're necessarily budgeting. So let me get back to you on that. I guess maybe I need to write an article soon about some of my favorite budgeting blogs and podcasts and stuff like that. But I know that there are resources out there. And if you want some more, whoever asked that, shoot me an email and I'll see if I can come up with some things for you. But mostly, go into Google and just type in, budgeting if you need some assistance. There's so many things out there. One of the things that I do believe is that we live in the age of information overload. And so sometimes it gets overwhelming because there's so much that you don't do anything, right? So pick something, go type into Google and like type in budgeting resource and just click on one and read it. And, it's like, and if you don't like that one, try a different one. But we do live in an age where just everything is available at our fingertips, which for a lot of us means that we don't do anything with it and I'm the same way. Sometimes it just gets paralyzing. Yes. Analysis paralysis.
All right. Well, David, I've really enjoyed having you on. It's always fun. Always fun talking budgeting and spreadsheets. That's I love spreadsheets. I spend most of my life in a spreadsheet. I'm going to hand it back to Dan, but really enjoyed having you on, David.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, David. Look, let's be honest. The real reason David's doing a podcast is he thought if Dan and Scott can do this, I can do this. Okay. I mean, that's the truth. All right. I think the fact that, there weren't budgeting podcast, other resource top of the mind, David, tells me that you might have this niche. And I'm going to tell people listening, I would trust the teacher in a niche over somebody else. I would say that right there. I think teachers are just such good-hearted people. And I think you saw the way David presents. And so you can imagine that having a session with him or sessions would be really rewarding and educational. I think that would be undoubtedly true. David, we cannot wait to schedule the student loan event. That's going to be, I think, really popular. We hope to have that scheduled by next week so you can register for that. But David, I know we're going to stay in touch, and just thank you again. I learned some things and it was very impressive. Thank you very much.
No, thank you guys. Like I said, this was great. And the biggest thing that I always say is that my whole goal in life is just to help other teachers. And so I'm glad sorry, Tara, I'm sorry. People that work in education. And so like, that's been my mission from day one. And everything that I've added on, like the, certified student loan professional, is just to help. How can I help more teachers out? Because as we've talked about before, so many people not even don't help teachers, but try to take advantage of them. And so we need more people in the space, I believe, that are doing it for good rather than for themselves.
It's been one of the best things about 403 BYs has been meeting so many teachers like David, Tara, Jessica, just all of you on all of our calls. We are just so appreciative of what you do. And if we can be of any help, it really makes us feel really good. Thanks everyone for taking some time out of your busy days to join us. We hope to see you at another event. Thanks again. And I'm going to start the round of applause for David. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate that. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.